One farmer says, seems to me there was a tea party in Boston that was illegal too.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold.
We shall seek to establish and maintain a dollar which will not change its purchasing and debt-paying power during the succeeding generation.
As anguished shrieks rose up from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange.
Government credit and government currency are really one and the same thing. A reserve of gold and a small reserve of silver.
Why do central banks hold it? Well, it's a form of reserves. Why don't they hold diamonds? Well, it's tradition, long-term tradition. Well, some people still think it's money.
Hey, welcome back to the Junius Maltby channel. Thanks for joining us today for a sit-down. We need to sit down. We need to talk about something. The U.S. national debt. This is probably one of the main issues, main topics that kind of absolutely woke me up one day. I remember even where I was sitting, what I was doing, when it dawned on me the absolute unsustainability of the trajectory of the United States debt. What it meant for the economy, what it meant for the nation as a whole, its security, the strength of its currency, everything. The ramifications that it would eventually have for the consequences of it. And it was pretty disturbing. I gotta tell you, it was one of those moments where, you know, people talk about being red-pilled or blue-pilled or woke or black-pilled. All these different things are based. Although, you know what I'm talking about, all those terms. It was, let's call it gold-pilled. Yeah, let's make up a new name here for the Junius Maltby channel community. I was gold-pilled instantly. I mean, I had already a pretty strong affinity for precious metals. I'd been, you know the story here. I've been involved with them since I was, my earliest memories, since I was like 7 years old when I got my first Silver Eagle. Well, today I got a notification. I slept in because I was exhausted, and it was from my dad regarding the U.S. debt. He sent me an article, headline, and I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I knew where we were at, 23 trillion coming up on 24 trillion. And here we go. Here's the 24.1 trillion on the debt clock. We're going to talk about the debt clock real quick. I don't visit this site a lot, but I stopped by today because of that article. I figured I'd get some nice screen grabs for today's conversation. And I know this is going to be boring for some people because they don't like numbers. They don't like anything, math or economics. For those people, I would just ask, why are you even here? You know how to get out. Go type in Dancing with the Stars up in the search bar and go watch that, or The Voice, or some stupid other video on YouTube. That's not what this is. We're not here for entertainment. If you're entertained by this, great. If not, I don't really care. I'm just here to talk. And if there's 3 people listening, that's a crowd, in my opinion. This channel wasn't started to get popularity or to go viral or anything. It's just a conversation place for these topics. So if it's boring, boom, get out. If the video is too long, get out. Skip to the end. I don't care. We're going to talk about gold towards the end. I made a frightening discovery this morning, and it ties very nicely into this conversation about the debt. Because I think there's a primal response to it. I think people know what's going on. I think a lot of people are waking up to it. And it's not just because of this pandemic that's out there. There's something else going on. And it's the economy, stupid. So, I do take it as a compliment that sometimes this channel might offend some people. When I make references to the booger-eating window lickers, the Diet Coke drinkers, the Dorito chip munchers, and your average typical idiot, your Joe Six-Pack American who's just sitting there, doesn't have a flipping clue what the hell's going on, doesn't even care. Those people are going to face some pretty severe consequences eventually. I mean, look at the level of the normalcy bias that hit just with the current events. The emotional instability and immaturity of your average American, the lack of preparedness, how they handled it. I mean, there were people that were crippled with fear over really nothing. I mean, nothing's even happening still. And they couldn't handle it. They hoarded toilet paper. I mean, that's how stupid these people are. And contemplate that for a moment. Let that go through the synapse system of your cerebral cortex and just contemplate for a moment hoarding toilet paper and the things that people bought and how they reacted and their lack of preparedness. Now, this was in the words of somebody recently on the news, a fire drill. You know, really, things are pretty good still. Yeah, the economy's collapsing, essentially. But what we experienced was a fire drill. And I don't know if what we're seeing right now is going to lead ultimately to that one hyperinflationary event that we've all talked about, the ones that we've seen occur in other countries, or that complete Ice 9 frozen economy that we hear Jim Rickards talk about, you know, the absolute economic doom that some people anticipate or envision. And I don't think any of us really know what that would even look like. You know, in all honesty, so far right now where we're sitting with a third of Americans unable to pay their rent, 17 million filing for unemployment in like the last month, the Dow down, 20-something percent, 30% from its all-time highs. Right now we're already worse than anything I possibly imagined 3 months ago. So don't call me a doomsdayer, don't call me a Debbie Downer, you know, a pessimist, any of that stuff. As a matter of fact, I think people that are pessimistic, they just have a firmer grasp on reality, because it just tends to be that the world's a pretty pessimistic place most of the time. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. Not a lot of good things happening when you have a planet full of fleas. So let's keep looking at this here. This is the debt clock. All right, let's move on. Let's get to the video. We're at 6 minutes in. We really haven't even looked at it. So let's talk about this for a minute. I want to do something here. We're going to start the video off with a debt clock snapshot. And then when we wrap it up, I'll throw another one in at the very end. We'll see how much the U.S. debt grew since we made the video. And that should be an interesting little experiment. Right now we're sitting at $24,123,684,528,630. That's the U.S. national debt. Let's take a look here, because there's a feature on the debt clock where it talks about gold and silver. And I want to just bring it up for a minute and just touch on it. So this is the dollar to gold ratio on the U.S. debt clock. $19,301 per ounce. That's how many dollars to gold ratio now. Back in 1913, when the Fed was founded, it was about $28.78 per ounce. A little bit closer to what the actual government value placed upon gold was. You know, at that time, the fixed value on gold was $20.67. A little bit of trivia there for you. I know a lot of you have that memorized. But back then in 1913, gold was $20.67 an ounce. And a $20 gold piece held roughly just close to under an ounce of gold. So there you have it. It was $28, again, $28.78 in circulation to gold per ounce. Much closer than the 19,301 we're seeing now. So what we would need to do today is move the decimal over 1 in order to really get closer to the dollar to gold ratio today. And that's why when we talk about gold sitting at $1,700 an ounce, we don't even blink at it. I mean, we know that it's undervalued. You know that. Now let's take a look at silver, because this one's actually pretty surprising as well. Silver to dollar ratio now, $2,328 per ounce. Imagine that. I can't imagine that. I think if silver hit $2,328, it would be an insane moment. It really would. People would, I don't think the silver stacking community could handle it. I think we would hear the explosions of their minds around the world. Some of you guys would be set. I mean, I've seen your stacks, and just a word to you is from the wise, not that I'm wise or anything, but if it ever starts getting close to that, delete all of your videos and just go into hiding. Delete your channel, delete all your stack videos, all your social media, burn your phone, and start hiding your stuff, because someone's coming for it, probably the state. And here's the dollar to silver ratio in 1913, 264. So there you go. A little bit closer. I mean, back then they valued it at $1. So much closer. But here we are looking at it, $2,328. My dear stunted mind fellow Americans who happen to be handicapped in this area, I know this isn't your fault. I know you weren't given this information in school. I know that the mass media complex has really spent a good amount of effort and time distracting you from the reality of the situation. So it's at no fault of your own that you are stunted and that you are differently abled when it comes to grasping certain concepts. Some of you out there I know get it, and that's why you're here. I've been to your channels, I've watched your videos, and you know what's going on. A lot of you. I've read your comments. Some of you are brilliant. As a matter of fact, I think most of you are far more brilliant than most people I meet on a day-to-day basis anywhere else. So there you go. The federal debt, this is the main event today. It took us 10 minutes to get to it. Federal debt topped $24 trillion for the first time. The Government Accounting Office says that the current federal fiscal path is unsustainable. I did a video a few years ago, several years ago, where we covered an interview by one of the comptroller generals of the U.S. government. And when he left, that was his take on it. And this is like 10 or 15 years ago. He said, it's over. They can't do anything. The whole thing's coming to an end. It's going to crash. The U.S. economy isn't going to function. It's unsustainable. It's not going to work. Well, I don't think they changed their tune. I mean, these are accountants. They don't have a sense of humor. And I don't think any of them have the ability to, mince words. They just see numbers. That's what they do. They're the accountant. They probably have some pretty rad form of weaponized autism. We've seen a lot of the Fed action over the last few weeks and months. Just last night, we talked about the new $2.3 trillion that they just kind of created out of nothing, out of thin air. And they're injecting this money into the system. They're buying treasuries. And the entire situation is this grotesque expansion of the money supply. And as one person put it recently, he called it an orgy of money printing. And there's really no way for you or I to be able to comprehend the amount of money they're talking about, the amount of dollars that they're talking about. Again, $1 trillion is 1,000 billions. And when you start visualizing that and actually looking at what pallets of cash look like, because we talked about that in a video a long time ago from the Visual Capitalist, and I'll try to bring those slides up here in a minute. I'll put them towards the end. We'll talk about them. The pallets of cash stacked higher than skyscrapers, each one representing a certain valuation. Well, the federal debt that we're looking at now, and the news, the pertinent part of this article, is that the federal debt's climb from $23 trillion to the $24 trillion threshold was the fastest climb from $1 trillion marker to another in the history of the federal debt. It took only 159 days. And if I remember correctly, we made a video when it hit $23 trillion, and it seems like yesterday, doesn't it? I remember when we discussed it. As a matter of fact, I think I remember even within a year, a couple years ago or a year ago, we talked about the when it hit $22 trillion for the first time. But I definitely remember in recent time, about 159 days ago, we did a video discussing the debt moving from 22 to 23. And well, now it's at the $24 trillion mark, and it's a record pace. It only took 159 days. This is that hockey stick parabolic curve, and it's not a good one. This is a bad one. This is the debt increasing exponentially, and the speed and velocity in which it's doing so is getting faster and faster. It's getting out of control. It's out of hand. They have no way of arresting it or slowing it down. And eventually, it's going to lead to some serious, well, it already is leading to problems, but much more serious problems than we're seeing now. Let's take a look at this chart below. It's going to show us the date on which the federal debt surpassed each $1 trillion threshold from $5 trillion to $24 trillion. And the reason they start, I think, 5 is because it took literally the entire duration of U.S. history just to reach that 5. I mean, it took the nation's entire history just to reach the $1 trillion mark until fairly recently. I myself was born before the United States even reached $1 trillion in debt. The U.S. national debt didn't top the $1 trillion mark until October 22nd, 1981. So that gives you an idea. I'm older than that. But think of that for a minute. From 1776 to 1981, they hadn't even reached $1 trillion. They fought World War I, World War II, Vietnam, the Korean War, the Civil War, everything else in between. That's just the wars now. We went through the Great Depression, multitudes of recessions, expanded the entire country from the East Coast to the West Coast, built railroads, highways, bridges, interstates, name it. Name it. Think of that for a second. And they didn't even reach $1 trillion. And now, through the welfare warfare state, the military-industrial complex, the social programs, and the grotesque mismanagement of literally everything, we've gone from $1 trillion to $24 trillion. It's over. Ladies and gentlemen, it is over. It is over. This is unsustainable. We know that. We're going to reiterate that by just reading a couple more words here from the comptroller guys and the GAO and all them, just to make it look good and make it official here. But you know it. I know it. It's over. It's over. I mean, how stupid are people that can't see this? I rub my eyes in my head in anguish over this because there's nothing you can do to tell people otherwise. I mean, there's people out there right now eating Twizzlers and Sour Patch Kids, walking around with their thumb up there, you know what, contemplating their navel, staring at it's just, they got their phone. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. You're talking about serious consequences here. You better learn some skills. Learn some skills and get some agricultural roots in you, because it's about to get really real. Here's that depressing chart we just mentioned, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because I can't. I don't really care. There you go. The point is, it took a long freaking time to go from trillion to trillion. We'll just look at the first one. So it hit 5 trillion in February of 96, and then it didn't hit the next trillion, the 6 trillion mark, until February of 2002. So what is that? That's about 6 years. And then again, it took only 2 years. So 2002 to 2004 to do the next trillion. And now it's been doing it pretty much year on year until 2009. It passed the trillions. It hit 11 and then it hit 12, all within the same year. And it looks like it's more frequently doing things like that. This, however, what we're talking about today, was the fastest trillion they've ever done as far as U.S. debt. 159 days, again, to remind you, going from 23 to 24 trillion. I had a socialist person, that I knew at one point in my life, and they thought that the debt was a good thing. There was nothing bad about it. It was actually necessary, and would scoff and laugh at me for any concerns that I had regarding the debt. I don't get it, but anyways. In its annual report to Congress on the nation's fiscal health, which was published last month, the Government Accountability Office said, the federal government's fiscal path is unsustainable. Long-term fiscal projections by GAO, CBO, and in the 2019 financial report show that absent policy changes, the federal government continues to face an unsustainable long-term fiscal path, said the GAO report. And although each of these long-term projections uses somewhat different assumptions, their conclusions are the same. Over the long term, the imbalance between spending and revenue that is built into current law and policy will lead to 1. Deficits exceeding $1 trillion each year, beginning in fiscal year 2020, and 2. Both the annual deficit and cumulative total debt held by the public continuing to grow as shares of GDP, said the GAO. This situation, in which debt grows faster than GDP, means the current federal fiscal path is unsustainable, the GAO concluded. This is the reason the Junius Maltby channel exists. Now, I know it says there's 26,000 subscribers. As a matter of fact, we just hit the 26,000, I believe, yesterday. And that's pretty surprising that there's actually that many people that have subscribed. However, we do lose quite a few often. I think we lost like 800 or 900 during that same course of time over the last month. People just unsubscribe or YouTube deletes them. I can see it in an analytical thing. It shows me that we shed so many, and then so many also came on. So regardless, we had a surplus, or we grew, a net gain, and we hit the 26,000 mark, which is interesting. Because I only see like 50 of you in the comments. I don't know where the other 25,550 people are. There's only about 50 of you that are in the comments participating any given time. But that's the reason this channel was started. Now, I wish it was not for my own sake. I don't care about me or the channel. I just wish the information was out there. That's essentially one of the motivating factors behind starting this channel, was A, getting the conversation with people that wanted to hear it, because I think my friends and family got sick of talking to me about it, so I needed to talk to myself. So I'd lock myself in a room and then talk to you guys. And here we are now. If there's one thing you can do as a subscriber, a viewer, someone who stops by and participates in the Junior Small P channel, it's share some of the videos here that actually have the good information. I don't know which ones those are, the ones you think. Maybe this one about the debt, and some of the other gold ones. Maybe some of the speeches and writings that are other people talking much more intelligible than I am. However, we need to get the information out there, because we have an opportunity here. We know this thing's falling apart. We know it's going to break down. And I'm going to show you some further evidence of that in a moment before we wrap things up. But you have an opportunity to not only secure gold and silver for yourself, but to hopefully convince people you truly care about. Now, I'm not talking about those people out there that you couldn't help them if you tried. They're the ones that would sit in their house with their roof on fire and wouldn't come outside because it's you telling them it's on fire. I know those relationships exist. There's certain people out there, they're just stubborn, they're ignorant, they are incapable of seeing things the way they truly are, because I don't know if it's they eat their toothpaste or what, but they're just not functioning at that level. It's like the body snatchers thing. It's like you knock on their head, there's just nobody home. They got that glazed over look. They're just watching their reality TV and contemplating their navel. And they just inhale, they exhale, they blink, they eat food and have bowel movements. That's it. That's the extent of their existence on the planet. You can't help them. But there are people out there that might have some critical thinking abilities. They might be able to contemplate what you're talking about, and they might be able to entertain logic and reason, and you might be able to convince them, or get them to, hey, allocate some wealth towards precious metals. Get out of the U.S. equities. Try to limit your dollar exposure. Here's the big picture. Here's what we're looking at. How about you consider some wealth preservation, some dynastic wealth preservation? It's possible. Share them some videos. If you do one thing, there's 26,000 of you right now. Each one of you, try to get one more person to stop by and check out the channel here, and to consider some of the materials that we've covered and talked about, and to read some of the brilliant comments that you guys have. And there's actually a comment I want to read. We did one last night. I want to read another one today, because one of you left a pretty good comment earlier, and I got to go back through my the comments and try to find it. But let's move towards looking at gold sovereigns for a minute, because I mentioned earlier this month that I think there should be a gold sovereign index, and we should track the availability and the amount in supply, because it's a very good indicator for what's going on in the gold world. We know and have been talking about the COMEX breaking down and a huge demand for gold supply, haven't we? Yes. Physical gold to be delivered, and that there's a breakdown in the paper price and the paper market from physical and all that. Now, when this all started and we started seeing these problems in the COMEX, I went and looked, and there were gold sovereigns still available at all the big sites in limited numbers. I'd see 100 or 300 in stock, maybe 1,100. I think the biggest I saw was maybe 1,150 or so at one of the sites. Now, the other bullion that we talk about, the Eagles, the Buffaloes, the Krugerrands, a lot of them gone. They got consumed pretty quickly. We saw a huge demand spike and a lot of that gold taken off the market. Now, follow me for a minute. Here, come on, follow me. Come, take my hand, come. Let me show you something, come, sit down. What movie is that from? One of you guys got to be able to get the scene. That's a There's a good classic movie, and that's in it. But we'll see who can get it, who can guess that. Here we are. I think this is Provident Metals. I went to all of them for you guys. Well, the big ones. I went to Provident, SD, JM Bullion, and APMEX. And all I did is look for sovereigns. We're looking for sovereigns today to give us an idea, because it's the most common gold coin on the planet, most worldwide recognized, and it might be the highest populated gold coin ever minted. And these were minted back from 1830s up until today. So I went there, and this is what we see. Literally out of stock across the board. I've been buying gold and silver since I was 7. This has never happened before. I have never seen an absolute empty supply of British gold sovereigns in my life. This has never happened. Again, gold spiked $50-something yesterday. You'd think somebody would be selling it, dumping it, and if these guys had anything in stock, they'd be selling it, but they're not. And I don't want to hear the conspiracy theories that these big dealers are sitting on piles of sovereigns. I'm telling you, they're sold out. They're gone. No one's selling them to them, and they don't have them. They are out of stock. They are gone. The reason for that, these are one of the lowest premium over spot gold coins in the world. There was a time where they were $10 to $14, even $15, $20 over spot. You're getting a beautiful 22 karat gold coin with a lot of history behind it, world recognized, and they're 0.2354, just under a quarter ounce of gold, and they're gone. They're unavailable. I was telling you guys out there to buy these a month ago. Within the last month, several times I was repeating, hey, get the sovereigns, buy the sovereigns. They were still in stock. Get them, get them, get them. I was telling my dad, hey, get British sovereigns. Get as many of them as you can. Try to find them if you can. And, well, now that's not quite possible. They are off the market. And again, this is with what occurred yesterday with gold spiking significantly, $50-something an ounce on the day. It's all-time high now in the last 7 years. I think we're at a 7-year high, 1740s. Gold's up there. If these guys had supply, they would be dumping it, because none of these dealers bought sovereigns for more than what gold is right now. They're not selling them because they don't have them. I know a lot of people think, oh, they're not selling them because, well, they're waiting for it to go up higher. Possibly. They might have some. I doubt that. Knowing how these bullion dealers work, I doubt that. I don't think that's the case. I think they don't have them. As a matter of fact, I know they don't. And here's the deal. Even if gold dealers and silver, if these precious metals dealers have some metal and they're refusing to sell at any level, you can't judge them for it. That's their right. That's private property, my friend. That's the free market. If they want to speculate that it's going to go higher and not sell you something that they themselves own for a price that is dictated by people over in Wall Street, the paper trader guys, that's entirely their right. I get upset when people voice frustrations at the gold dealers and the precious metals guys that refuse to sell for spot or for premiums that you, the purchaser, think should be dictated by you, the purchaser. Sorry, that's not the way the free market works, my friend. They own the metal, you don't. It's their possession. It's their property. And they can sell it to you for whatever the hell they want to, because it's theirs. And guess what? It's a physical game now. It's not paper anymore. And the guys that have the physical, they're going to dictate the price in the future. And you better get used to paying high premiums on metal, because they're going to get bigger and bigger and bigger until no amount of fiat that you have will be able to buy you any amount of metal. So you can complain all you want about these premiums, these high premiums. Oh my God, they're asking, oh my goodness, $80, $100 over an ounce of gold? But spot's this. First off, don't ever tell me what spot is and then quote me the premium price and act like there's this big spread and it's unjust. Okay, unless you're buying COMEX bars like we've talked about, I don't want you talking about the spot price. I try to tell people that all the time. The point of this is, you have nothing to complain about. If they're going to sell you physical, you're going to pay what they want for it, or you're not going to get it, because there's someone standing right behind you with a roll of bills wrapped in a rubber band, cash that's going to give that dealer exactly what he's asking. So just because you're not going to pay it doesn't mean there's not a line stretching down the block of people that will. And a perfect example of that is these sovereigns. Because a lot of these dealers were getting a little bit more for the sovereigns than I was comfortable even paying. You know, $440, $450, $460. A lot of them were getting essentially $30, $40, $50, $60 over spot. I think the highest I saw on some of these sites was about $40, $50 over spot. Even then, though, it's pretty significant. People paid it. There was a line stretching around the world, around the globe. People back to back around the equator with cash in hand waiting to buy gold for those prices. And now during my journey today, I stumbled upon APMEX, and they were the only one to have sovereigns in stock. If you buy 1 to 19 of them, for Checker Wire they're $441, for Bitcoin looks like they were $445, and then for credit card or PayPal they were $459. But they had some sovereigns in stock. So how many did they have in stock? Well, I tried to add 500 or so to the cart, 400 to the cart. That's how I kind of get an idea, because it'll tell you exactly how many are in stock when you do that. Well, it wouldn't let me buy 400 or 500 of them because it said, unfortunately, we only have 140 in stock. So from what I've seen, I've been to JM Bullion, SD Bullion, Provident Metals today, and APMEX. And of those 4 giant dealers, those 4 major movers in precious metals, there's only 140 British sovereigns in stock. That should concern you. And if any of you guys are sitting on a pile of cash and you don't know what to do with it, it's kind of burning a hole in your pocket, go over to APMEX and buy all 140 of those, would you? And if you do, remember where you got the tip from, and maybe send me a sovereign. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Keep the sovereign for yourself. Preserve your wealth. But go get all 140 of those. I'm going to check in at the end of this video and see how many of them are even left in stock. Who knows? Maybe someone showed up and bought them all. Alright, I went back over to Demonocracy and grabbed some of their visuals. We've used these in videos in the past. So bear with me. $100 million on a pallet sitting there. There's $1 billion. This is what $1 trillion looks like. Take a look at that. That's $1 trillion. They just spent that in 159 days. Here we can see the $20 trillion U.S. debt. $20 trillion. When it hit 20 trillion, this is what it looked like. Awash, drowning in debt. 20 trillion stacked to the sky around the Statue of Liberty. All of that, 20 trillion. This, all the gold ever mined since the beginning of time. All of it. That's all the gold since the book of Genesis till now. That's it in one cube. 166,500 tons of gold. And here is the amount the central banks of the world hold of this archaic and barbarous relic. They hold it out of tradition, remember? But look at how much gold they hold. And remember, these are old visuals. These are dated by a few years. But you can see that obviously the central banks and governments of the world do not view gold as the barbarous relic they want you to believe that it is. They know the direction we are headed. They know the destination, that all fiat will ultimately end up being worth its true intrinsic value, and that is zero, and that gold is the ultimate extinguisher of debt, the only real money. Since we began making this video, the U.S. debt has grown by $175 million. Consider that for a moment. In the time it took me to make this video, $175 million in debt they have grown. Here's a screenshot of the debt clock just moments ago. And to put that in gold terms, I just did the math. That's 100,574 ounces of gold. In the time I just made this one video, the U.S. government grew in debt by over 100,574 ounces of gold. And it's continuing to grow as I speak to you. By the time this is uploaded, it'll be even more. But right now, as it stands, that $175 million, well, that's 251 400-ounce bars. 251 bars of gold weighing 400 ounces just like that. That's how much the debt grew in the time we made this video. And it only increases, it only gets worse. And that will lead to only one thing: an increase in valuation of gold in these rotting paper fiat trash notes, and the absolute destruction and annihilation of the modern economic Keynesian system. It's inevitable, it's written, and, well, I think you guys know what to do. So here we are 35 minutes later of rambling and angry Junius rant. But I just appreciate you guys being here. Thanks for liking, for sharing, subscribing, and remember what we talked about. Don't complain about the premiums. Keep stacking metal and go convince some other people to join in on this conversation. Thanks for being here.